Hi everyone, Chris Wilkinson coming at you from AwesomeCGG in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Continuing on with our series of new player introductory videos. Today we're going to be talking about how to build your own deck. Now this is following up our first two videos. You saw the rules of the game, and then you saw a game played with pre-made decks from Pokemon. But now you're going to be able to make your own deck, and I'm going to show you what steps you should take to get that done. So what I have in front of me today is the deck of a local player, and I'm going to talk about some deck building concepts, and then I'm going to use this deck that's in front of me to kind of explain what they are and how you can relate them to when you make your own deck. So the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to deck building is your strategy. Now, it's very easy for newer players or people in general when they try to make a deck to just focus it on a type of Pokemon. A lot of times newer players will say things like, I have a fire deck, I have a water deck, etc. But I want to get your mind away from that, because building decks based on types is often not conducive to success. And really will only kind of hinder your deck building process. The best thing to do, or the best way to build a deck or start building a deck, is to have a core strategy, or in other words, how is my deck going to win the game? And there's many different ways that you could win the game. You could win, by taking all your prizes, by, milling your opponent out, getting rid of all their cards. There's a bunch of different things you can do to win a game of Pokemon, but what you want to do when you start your deck is figure it out. How am I going to win? And you can go from there. So, for example, in this deck, this is a Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX deck. Shadow Rider Calyrex has an ability that says once during your turn, you can attach a Psychic Energy to one of your benched Psychic Pokemon and draw 2 cards, and then its attack does 10 damage plus 30 for each Psychic Energy on your board. So it's pretty straightforward what you're looking to do. You're looking to set up Shadow Rider VMAXs, you're looking to put lots of energy on the board with its ability, and then you're looking to attack for big damage with Shadow Rider and other Pokemon that also benefit from having energy on the field. Now, just because this deck plays a lot of energy does not mean that every deck needs to play a lot of energy. Decks can play as little as 4 or as many as 16 energy. But the main thing that is important to know is that you need to base your counts on your strategy. There's no across the board number of each kind of card, but once you figure out how you're going to win, that'll dictate the amount of cards that you want in your deck. The next thing is, well, how do I pick that strategy? Well, that's where I want to talk about the different kinds of Pokemon that there are. So if you look at Shadow Rider falls in a category of cards that I would refer to as main Pokemon. Pokemon that are strong enough to be the core of a deck or the core of a strategy. Shadow Rider is obviously that. Other cards like that include Rapid Strike Urshifu, includes Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, or any of the powerful VMAXs or Stage 2 Pokemon that get printed every so often. So you want to make sure that the main focus of your deck is a Pokemon that is strong enough to carry itself on its own. Additionally, you have secondary Pokemon. Now, that's where the Alcremie VMAX that I have right here would come in. Alcremie has its attack for, you discard as many energy as you like attached to your Pokemon, and it does 60 damage for each energy that you discard, and it attacks using Psychic Energy. So it is a very useful partner for the Shadow Rider deck. And the thing about it is that Alcremie on its own is not powerful enough to be a strategy, but it thrives in the Shadow Rider deck. And that's what the role of a secondary Pokemon is. It's a strong Pokemon that you play in your deck, but on its own wouldn't really be the star. It's more of a role player. And finally, you have support Pokemon. In this deck, we have Crobat. They exist in other decks in cards like Cinccino, the Inteleon line, Eldegoss V is a good example. These are Pokemon that you play to either boost your consistency, search your deck, draw you cards, or recover resources in the case of things like Eldegoss. So this deck is playing one of each of those. You have a main Pokemon in Calyrex, you have a secondary Pokemon in Alcremie, and you have a support Pokemon in Crobat. And most decks want to have a combination of these things. You want your main Pokemon that revolves around your strategy, a secondary Pokemon to help out, and a support Pokemon to make sure that you're pulling off your game plan consistently. Speaking of consistency, I'm going to talk about trainer cards. Now, trainer cards, for most decks, at a competent level are going to be mostly trainer cards. And it may seem like, well, shouldn't it be mostly Pokemon? But it isn't. Trainer cards are really what you want to be doing in your deck. Trainer cards do it all. They search your deck for whatever you need. They draw you cards. They, switch your opponent's Pokemon in the course of the game. They can give your Pokemon additional effects like tool cards. Trainer cards are really what make the game of Pokemon what it is. So I want to start talking about the different kinds of supporters that we have. The first are draw supporters. In this deck, we have Professor's Research. Pokemon prints cards like Professor's Research very often. You discard your hand and draw 7 cards, and it is one of the most effective supporters that we have in the game. It might seem like a big drawback to discard your hand, but a lot of the time you can either play down your hand such that, you're not really discarding anything important, or there are even decks that, want to have cards in the discard pile, and Professor's Research can help with that. In addition to that, drawing 7 cards is extremely powerful, and it's really, there's no replacement for Professor's Research. I would probably put it in almost every deck. After that, we have Marnie. Marnie double sides in this deck as both a hand refresh and disruption for your opponent. You shuffle your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck and draw 5 cards, and your opponent shuffles their hand, puts it under their deck, and draws 4. So you can play what you need out of your hand and then draw some cards with Marnie, and you can take your opponent's cards in their hand and tuck them away under their deck, so they're going to have a hard time getting to them. There are other disruption supporters that we've seen in the history of the game. Anything that makes your opponent shuffle their hand into their deck and draw less cards than they started with is often a very powerful effect. There are also, which are not shown in this deck, there are supporters that heal your Pokemon, and oftentimes those can be powerful effects. Currently in this format we have Cheryl, which just heals all damage from your evolution Pokemon, except you have to discard the energy attached to them. It sees play in some other lists, and depending on your deck, healing supporters might be something worth considering. Next, we have Boss's Orders, which, like Professor's Research, is a supporter card that has an extremely powerful effect that cannot be replaced. It says you can switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active, and you get to choose. Now, the reason we play 4 of this deck, and the reason why I would play this in every deck, is because attacking the Pokemon that you want can often be the difference between winning or losing a game. And having the ability to switch your opponent's Pokemon whenever you want, with no drawbacks, with a Boss's Orders, is one of the best things that you can do, and this deck reflects it by playing 4. It's an effect that often gets printed, no matter what the format is, and I have no reason to believe that it won't. Additionally, we have Phoebe in this deck. Phoebe kind of falls into the miscellaneous category of supporters where, they kind of make supporters that do a lot of random things, and Phoebe does that. It helps out VMAXs and is more of a card that you would consider in a VMAX deck. It makes the effects of attacks not apply to VMAXs, so it's something I would look for if you had a VMAX focused deck. The next thing I want to talk about is Training Court, or Stadium cards in general. Stadium cards are usually important to have in your deck. Some of them synergize directly with what you're doing. In this case, Training Court gets you energy to use for Shadow Rider's attack and ability. It's also nice to just have a Stadium in your deck because other decks will be playing Stadiums, and you want to make sure that you're disrupting their strategy by playing your own Stadium. So we have 3 Stadiums in here. So next we're going to talk about the item cards. So item cards in this deck and in most decks are used for 2 purposes. The first is searching. So as you see, we have 4 Quick Ball, which searches for basic Pokemon, 4 Fog Crystal, which searches for a Psychic basic Pokemon or a Psychic Energy, and an Evolution Incense, which searches for evolution Pokemon. So the reason why these cards are good in this deck and good in every deck are because they allow you to effectively play extra copies of your Pokemon or energies that you can search out, and they're going to keep your cards flowing and keep your strategy from being executed. Now there are other cards. There's Great Ball. There are things like the newly printed Dream Ball, which all have different effects and are worth considering if you're making a deck. But when you make a deck, you want to make sure that you are having an adequate amount of search, because if you're just drawing cards and have no way of searching things out, it's likely that you're going to have unlucky, stretches where you don't draw what you need, and you want to maximize those out, and that's why we have search cards. Next, we have Pokemon Tools, which, not every deck plays Pokemon Tools, but generally tools get printed that are very useful. We have Air Balloon, which is going to reduce the retreat cost of our Pokemon by 2. Very good in this deck because you want to be moving your Pokemon around a lot. And also 2 copies of Switch, which serve a similar purpose, where you want your Pokemon to be switching back and forth. So that's why we play 2 copies of Switch. That is another common effect of trainers, is switching your own Pokemon and things of that nature. Additionally, we have 1 copy of Energy Recycler. Another genre of trainer cards or item cards is recovery. So you can get Pokemon back from your discard pile, you can get energy back from your discard pile, or any other card type that might be in format at the time. It's something you should look into because over the course of the game, your Pokemon are going to get knocked out. You're going to have to discard cards when you play Professor's Research, or if you're going to, use Quick Ball, things get discarded. So you want to have a suite of cards in your deck that are going to allow you to get things back that you've lost over the course of the game. In this deck, you really only have Energy Recycler and Training Court. But in a deck, I would consider cards like Ordinary Rod in order to get back Pokemon, and Rescue Carrier, a new card from Evolving Skies. And then finally, we're going to talk about energy. You have 13 basic energy in this deck. As I stated earlier, that's a lot. That's an unusually high number for an average deck, because that is central to Shadow Rider strategy, is having a lot of energy on the board. And I want to stress, this is not a hard and fast rule for every deck. Some decks will play a small amount of energy, and some decks, like you see here, will play 13. But like I said, it is very dependent on what your strategy is. So that's this deck, and that's everything we've talked about. The last thing that I want to go over is, how do you know how many of each Pokemon to play in your deck? Well, if it's your main Pokemon, if it's a stage 2 or a VMAX, you want to have a thicker line, and you want to have a lot of that Pokemon because you want to see it every game. It's your central strategy. When you have a stage 2 in your deck, you probably want to have 4 of the basic, naturally, and then if you're playing cards like Rare Candy, which allow you to skip right to the stage 2, you might want to go a little thinner on the stage 1 line, and then you want to match your basic line with your stage 2 line, so probably a 4-1-4 line or a 4-2-4 line. For VMAX decks, I would say you generally want either a 4-4 line or a 4-3 line that helps you draw them as consistently as possible. And yeah, it's your main strategy, so you want to maximize the number of them you can play in your deck. When it comes to secondary Pokemon, I would say you want probably a couple copies, probably not maxing it out. We have a 2-2 line of Alcremie in this deck. Other decks, I'm thinking of common secondary attackers. Zamazenta, really, you only see like 1 or 2 of those in each deck. And it's something that, you want it to be in your deck, but you don't want it to be the thing you're drawing all the time. Very similar line of logic with support Pokemon. Obviously, support Pokemon are very useful, but if you only draw support Pokemon, then you're really not going to win the game. So you really want a small number, such as 2 Crobat in this deck. The other thing you have to keep in mind when you're determining counts of cards is your search, because you're playing 4 VMAXs here, 2 more here, so you have 6 total, and you also have 4 Evolution Incense, which can search out your VMAXs. So when you think about it, you're really playing 10 VMAXs in your deck. So you want to make sure that in addition to the actual Pokemon, you also play outs to Pokemon that are item-based or supporter-based. Quick Ball and Fog Crystal are, kind of examples of that, but for basic Pokemon and Psychic Energy. And, yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for you today. Obviously deck building is something that you'll get better at as time goes on. You play games. One thing I would say is that your deck is never really finished. New cards are going to come out. You're going to, test out certain cards that you like or won't like. And, your deck is going to be a constantly evolving, changing thing. And, it's just something that you will get better at doing as you play more games. So thank you for watching. If you're in the area, please stop by, ask us questions. We can help you build a deck. You can pick up new cards to make your deck better, and you can ask us for any advice. So until next time, thanks for watching.